Hello, everybody. Welcome to Practical Strategies for Paying Direct Service Staff a Living Wage. My name is Nicole Johnson. I'm a directing attorney at Homebase, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. We are very excited to chat with our amazing panelists today and share some information. And hopefully, you all will walk away with some new tools, some new skills, and resources to make living wage possible in your area. We can go to the next slide. Yep. So for today's Zoom session, we are recording. That does not mean that your face is going to be included. It will really just be the speaker. So it'll be the panelists, myself, and closed captioning is available. You can click the little icon in your settings and you should be able to see text for every word that's spoken should you want or need that feature. And then we're asking that you use the Q&A or the question and answer feature in Zoom to ask questions during each of the presentations. So what's going to happen today is each of our panelists is going to do a brief presentation. We'll pause to allow some time for you, the audience, to ask questions within the Q&A feature. They're going to pop up kind of the way a chat would work in a typical Zoom room. So this one is set up as a webinar where you just do the question and answer. Once those questions are all populated, we'll come back at the end and we'll start hopefully getting answers to some of those thought-provoking questions y'all are going to ask today. We can go to the next slide. Right. So a little bit about Homebase. Homebase is a nonprofit technical assistance provider, and we focus on really responding to homelessness, and that's all aspects of it. We support communities in capacity building to prevent and end homelessness. We do a little strategic consulting, some innovative design and change management, and we focus on trainings, for service providers, for continuums of care. We offer one-on-one technical assistance, and we also help communities make sure that they are remaining in compliance and operating according to national best practices. So again, welcome. We'll have some introductions. We're going to let our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go again through question and answers, and we'll close out. We do have a brief survey for you all. A little bit about myself. I am, again, a directing attorney here at Homebase, but prior to becoming an attorney, I had a very amazing career as a clinical social worker. I managed and directed shelters in the DC area for quite a while. And then I did some work in child welfare. Those of you who are in direct service, you will completely understand that little chuckle I had when I started talking about my social work career. One of the reasons that I decided to become an attorney as opposed to continuing with my career in social work and indirect service specifically was money. I am a first generation college student. I'm the very first generation in my family to exit poverty, and just frankly, the pay that we received as direct service workers was not enough to meet my financial goals for myself. It wasn't enough to have the quality of life that I wanted as somebody with an advanced degree. And it also wasn't enough to be able to provide for my parents and my grandparents who relied on me financially. And so I had to make a career shift. And that's the case for a lot of us who are in direct service positions. We have all of this education, we have all of this experience through our work, but we are still not able to make enough money doing the work that we love, helping the people that we help, and really meet all of our dreams and live out all of our goals. So that's what we're talking about today. And we're hoping that we'll get some answers for you all to be able to go make this a reality in your community so that more people don't have to leave the profession and we don't have those high turnover rates. We can go to the next slide. So we're going to start a little shift. We're going to start with Marika. She is with Mute Incorporated, and then we'll come back to Lauren. Unfortunately, Ali Alexander Sheridan is not going to be with us today. Things happen. Something came up at the last minute. So unfortunately, we're going to miss those words, but we can pass it over to Marika Balico, who's going to share some of what Mute has been doing in this specific area. Marika?
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Um, just to tell you, you can go to the next slide. Just to tell you a little bit about Mute. and you can go to the next slide. That's just some of what we'll kind of talk about today. Just to talk a little bit about Mute. So I am the interim COC director for our balance of state. And I'm assuming that most of you will probably know what a COC is and what goes along in that. And Mute is the collaborative applicant for the COC. So I was deputy director for Mute, and now I am the interim COC director for the balance of state. So when I talk about Mute, I'm talking about also some of the things that the balance of state does, but for Mute, the agency, we cover about 76 counties. There in blue that you'll see, that's where all the counties we cover. We have 4 office locations across the state, and we have about 9 programs in our agency. We can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to get right into talking about what our agency looks like. We have about 29 employees. We have 4 open positions, so we run about that 33 number. And then the percent of employees that have been there for more than 2 years is about 62% of our current employees have been there or have been with us for more than 2 years. I will tell you that the large number of those who are newer is because we just got a new grant. And so all the ones who we've only replaced 2, I think it's 2 positions in this past year that needed to be filled. But for the most part, all of our employees have been with us for, a long time, especially in the social services world. 2 years is quite a long time. All right, next slide. So this is kind of what we offer. When looking at livable wages and benefits, what we did first was that we looked at the Bureau of Labor Statistics to guide us on how we set those wages. And then these are just some of the benefits that or just probably is all of our benefits that we give to our employees. We start with a 2-week paid vacation. So they earn a day for every day every month that's worked. We also provide 2 weeks of health leave. We also provide bereavement leave. It's interesting because my ED said, oh, why did you put the bereavement leave on there? And I never think of it as a benefit, but it is because it's not coming out of your health leave and you still get paid for it. So bereavement leave is separate from either of those. With our 2 weeks, with our vacation time, we do encourage folks, we very much so encourage folks to take their time. But there are some folks who are like, oh, I only needed a week. And so then we have the option of them being able to cash out their vacation days. We give that option twice a year. And of course, it is based on how grants are working. But we've been doing it now for, I believe it's been about 4 years. We are closed on all federal holidays. We provide 401k. It is the 401k package is probably what got me at Mute. We provide 11%. That does not come out of their paycheck. It is whether they match it or not, we provide 11% into their 401k. We have paid health, dental, and vision for the employee and their children. We have a tier system. So the longer you work for Mute, you start out in tier 1, you're at an entry level. And so tier 1 is the 2 years you get all of these options here, all of these benefits here. After 2 years, you move into tier 2 and you start earning more hours per month and your vacation leave. And your pay, of course, goes up. And we have 3 tiers that you can move into. A along with, a lot of times you will hear someone say, oh, my company gives me a pizza party. And personally, I don't want a pizza party. I want a day off. And so we kind of give folks those options. If you want a pizza party, great. We can do those fun things that you want to do, like mixers and lunches. But we try to do those things also just to build morale in the office. And so during our staff meetings, we have about 3 to 4 all state staff meetings a year. And so we'll get a skybox at the minor league baseball uh, game here in Mississippi. So we try to do fun things together. But another thing, a benefit that we got this from the staff, when I asked staff what do they see as benefits at our company, one of the things they said was our collab labs. So during staff meetings, during team meetings, we have what we call a collab lab. And that is basically we separate out and either we present them with a question, like maybe an issue that may have come up a couple of times with things that we need to work on with clients, or we just give them the open option of asking us questions or presenting questions that we kind of talk through as a team. And so that can be professional questions or it could be personnel questions. And so they feel like there's buy-in there. And so those collab labs are really important to them. And then lastly, we just providing the structure and the feedback. So providing structure for them, meaning that we give them everything that they need to do their job well. We provide you with a laptop, a phone. We give candor feedback along with receiving it. And so staff also felt like that was a benefit that wasn't a physical benefit, but one that they really felt that was a benefit. Okay, next slide. Now we provide all of these things, but we also make sure that with providing all these things that we have the right people in place to enjoy these things. And so this great man here, Steve Harper, used to work with our agency, and now he works for a state agency, but he's also a friend. But he always used to have this saying with his team of, don't let me see that I can do this without you. You can go to the next slide. And so we make sure that our team also understands that we have good work that needs to be done, and we want to be able to do it. And so this Theodore Roosevelt quote of far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. We make sure that staff also understands that we have work worth doing, and we want to make sure that you're taken care of, but there is work to be done. And so we make sure that in taking those steps to support that living wage, because now that we offer all these things, how are we making sure that we can continuously give those things to folks? So one, we do create a culture of we have work that needs to be done. So we do have to do the work. We encourage self-care. I know a lot of times people will say companies need to make sure that they are taking care of folks, but I believe that self-care is just that. You are taking care of yourself, and me as the company don't need to tell you how that self-care needs to take place. So I don't need to tell you that a pizza party is what you need. If you're telling me that a day off is what you need, then a day off is what you need. And so we want to make sure that we create that culture of you taking care of yourself because work does have to be done. Non-performance, we are making sure that when folks are that non-performers basically don't weigh down performers. And so it does bring down morale if someone is seeing where they are not, where one person on the team is enjoying all of these benefits, but they're not actually doing the work. And so we make sure that we have that feedback there. We do a lot of cross training. I like to describe it to staff when people first come on. I tell them that everyone has a lane here. But at some point, you do have to cross a lane if you're going to get to an exit, right? And so we make sure that you know how to cross lanes while staying in your lane. Cross training does a lot of, there's a lot of benefit to training. One, um, I think it was last year, I was at an SSVF conference, and one of the VA workers said that, their struggle with taking off is that they can't actually take off. They're still working, or they have to because no one else there can do what they're doing. And so we see the benefit in actually cross training so that no one feels like when I take a vacation day, I still have to answer the phone because nobody else can do what I'm doing. Um, and so and also cross training is important because it helps to fill positions that may need filling quickly. And it helps folks to grow within the agency because if now I know how to, our new program coordinator, he started off as an employee specialist. He came from a carpet cleaning company, and now he is our program coordinator. And what he did was he made sure to train in every area of our agency. And so when this position came up, it was a no-brainer. He knows all the programs. He knows everything about this program. He knows every position of this program. And so we really do think that cross-training actually helps with not just making sure that the job is done, but making sure that it gives people opportunities. Um, there's going to be a diversity of personalities and work ethics. And so I think that there basically it's just that we try to make sure that folks that are that people understand that the culture is the culture here. And so, like I said earlier, work has to be done. How do we get the money though? We apply for funding. One thing I like about my executive director is that he really is a visionary, and he doesn't think about how we have this much money and therefore we can hire this many people. He thinks about we have this much work that needs to be done. We need this many people to do it with. So we have to find this amount of money to do it with. So there is no, we only can pay this person this amount. We need this person, therefore we need to find this amount of money to pay them. And so I think that really helps with supporting that living wage. We also plan ahead. You can't think about it the year that you need it. You got to think about it way ahead of time. And then another way to support that living wage is just asking for feedback. We are every year we are asking our staff about how do you feel about what's available, what benefits we have, and what you have, and what we may be able to do more. What would you like to see? Does that mean we can always pull it off? No. But it does mean that we know what they're looking for. Okay, next slide. And then how do we do this? We do, like I said earlier, we have multiple streams of funding. We work with different streams of funding because we know that having some of that cross training. We do also, like for instance, if we have an SSVF case manager who's working in an area that doesn't have that many SSVF, doesn't have that many veterans, then that case manager may be a dual case manager, and they may work 50% in SSVF and 50% in like CLC. So we do mix those grants together. Next slide. Okay, I was trying to go kind of fast because this is a longer presentation. And so I hope I didn't go too fast.
Thank you, Marika. We have one question so far. What about jury duty, protection, or pay? Do you all offer that as a benefit to your employees?
Jury duty, and what was the other one?
About jury duty, protection, or pay?
Oh, yes. So we do allow, I can't remember how many days it is. So we allow for jury duty, and I forget how many days we pay for it before it is that you have to start using your your PTO. Um, I want to say that it's like 3 to 5 days of jury duty that we will allow. And we also, for those who serve in the military, they get we have some reservists, and so they get their 2 weeks. It is not with pay because of the fact that they get paid during those times, but there is no risk of them losing their job or anything like that.
Thank you. Before I ask this next question, everybody at home base, close your ears. Are y'all hiring? Because 11%, that 11% for the 401k is huge for direct services. Just, nonprofits in general, it's usually a very low number, if anything at all. It's usually a 403b. And usually the vesting period is longer than anybody is ever going to stay in these jobs. So that's amazing. I kid, I'm not leaving home base, but that 11%, that looks amazing. Um,
Yeah.
Another question is Laurel Benfield says she works in a balance of state COC in North Carolina. Does your agency do any work to encourage, incentivize, or push the agencies across your COC to pay their staff a living wage?
We do. So we do some trainings, but also whenever we have agencies have openings, we do like we encourage a friendly competition of we can open this up, but there are multiple agencies that have job openings, and this one is paying this amount, and this one is paying this amount. And so we encourage those agencies to look at those amounts and say, hey, it's not a competitive wage. And this other agency does have openings too. So you're going to have that opening is going to be there for a long time if you're not thinking about making that wage more competitive. And all of them, a lot of agencies, they have the trouble of they figure out that it's not a competitive wage, and then they're like, well, how do I make it competitive now? And you may not be able to do it in the same year, but you better start thinking about it. Otherwise, you will have more openings for a longer amount of time.
Thank you. Another question, how do you prevent non-performers from bringing down performers?
One, honest feedback. I just recently had a conversation with a team leader who was kind of doing the work for the person and having to explain to them that we can't see non-performers if it looks like they are performing. So we have the conversation from the top down of everybody's got to be doing their job through evaluations. So if there's an evaluation and it's not good, you're going to be put on an improvement plan, and we stick to that plan. So we are making sure that in those 3 months or whatever amount of time, if you didn't improve, then we are moving on. Now we do try to do the 3R method. Sometimes people just didn't learn it the first time, so we retrain. If you're not performing well, we will retrain you and retrain you. Then we we try to do what, like we may have you on the wrong seat on the bus, so we will reposition. Maybe we have you in outreach, but really you need to be in housing. So we retrain, then we reposition. But if those two don't work, then we retire.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear more when we get into the panel discussion. This was amazing. Thank you, Marika.
Yes.
If you all still have questions, feel free to drop them in the question and answer section, and we will definitely get back to them when we hop over to our panel discussion, when we start just firing off questions at our amazing panelists. And now we are going to move ahead to Lauren Fay. Lauren, you can go ahead and take over.
Great. Thank you all so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Fay, and I am here from Seattle, Washington. I'm excited to be with you all this morning. We can go on here to the next slide. And I am working at DESC. That's the Downtown Emergency Service Center, where I've worked for the past 17 years now, actually. We are a very large nonprofit in the Seattle King County area, been established for over 45 years now at this point. Originally began though as an emergency shelter for individuals who were on the street and living with untreated mental health conditions, predominantly, kind of around the time where hospitals were like long-term hospitals were deinstitutionalizing a lot of long-term patients, that sort of situation. A lot of homelessness started to pop up in urban areas. That is when our shelter came to be, and so that has kind of been the orientation of our mission from the get-go, has been to serve folks who are really not being served otherwise through traditional systems. So individuals with long histories of homelessness, and pretty significant behavioral health challenges, mental health, substance use disorder, those sorts of things. Right now, our mission has since evolved pretty enormously, from shelter exclusively to now we are a licensed behavioral health provider. We're also our county's crisis response provider. And then we are also a developer of permanent supportive housing. And so I'm going to talk a lot about kind of wages as it relates to all of those things, but permanent supportive housing really in particular. Right now, we have 17 apartment buildings across the city that we have built and own and operate, provide services in. And and at this point, we have about 1,000 authorized positions across all of our multiple programs. I think we have about 35 different programs throughout the county now at this point. So it's a lot of employees doing very important work, serving about 8,000 individuals throughout our county every year. Um, so wages are top of mind pretty consistently. For my role, which I forgot to introduce, I am our senior business manager. So I really focus in on a lot of the work that we do at DESC around our strategic priorities at this point. So anything that has to do with policies that are getting made that might be harmful to our clientele, to our staff, to our mission, to homelessness in general, to housing first initiatives, to permanent supportive housing. I'm trying to stay on top of all of those things and influence positive change wherever I can, both internally and externally with city, county, and state, as much as possible. So very excited to chat with you all about this today. We can go on to the next. So related to our wage work, though, that we've been doing for quite a while, I'll just highlight some of the challenges that we've been experiencing kind of in our area, and probably similar to what folks experience kind of regardless of region, I would guess, which is just that the need has continued to grow over time for housing resource. Um, Tends not to diminish, but grow. For us also with inflation rising year over year, our staff's wages have not kept up with that. Our contracts have never kept up with that, and it has never been a priority for whoever has been funding us. Usually, government contracts have not kept up with what it costs to actually pay our workers a living wage. There's been a long history of wage suppression in general in this field, and that has especially exacerbated inequalities for BIPOC workers and women, who tend to make up the workforce of this field. And then at DESC, what had happened, what we'd really started to seeing, and when this really all came to a head for us was in the middle of the COVID pandemic, around 2022. At one point, we had a vacancy rate where 1 in 4 of our positions was vacant. And when you have 1,000 positions and 1 in 4 is vacant, expecting 700 or so employees to do the work of what 1,000 need to be doing, it's not right, it's not fair, it's not going to work, and you have a lot of very unhappy people. So we were all feeling it real hard. And we knew something had to give. So, we just couldn't grow our workforce fast enough. And really, this was all the result of government coming to us and asking us to take on more. And so we had to say, stop, we can't keep taking on more. There's no more we can take on because there's no one willing to do the work anymore. Like, we need to get paid more to do this work. And so what we undertook at that point in time was a pretty large effort to increase our wages in a variety of different ways. And I'll talk about what some of that advocacy looked like to make that all possible here. We can go on to the next here. Before we talk about what that kind of looked like, I will share a little bit about our wage goals in general at DESC. So prior to the pandemic, back in like 2016, we had started an effort to focus in on wages more explicitly, when at the time our executive director, who was new as our executive director then, had taken over and had identified this as a key priority. We hadn't really done a significant look at what our wage goals should be for our nonprofit at the time. And we were a much smaller organization at this time. I will say we've grown enormously since this time period as well. So that has also played a large part into some of the challenges and some of our ability to grow our wages as well. But what we undertook at that time was an analysis really of where are we? And so we did that analysis using national data from Bureau of Labor Statistics. How do we rate compared to other nonprofits and similar or other roles across the country, in our state, locally? How do we compare with our positions compared to other comparable positions? And we used the median market data to figure out, like, how do we compare on average to all these other comparable positions, and found that we were far behind, even to market median at that point in time. And so we set a goal for ourselves at that point, back in 2016, to reach market median. And so that's what we had ahead of us for it took us about 5 years to get to the place where we just wanted to be at least average, which doesn't sound like a super inspiring, great goal, but it was a great place to start, truly, because it was hard in and of itself to get there. Again, coming back to that concept of when you are working in a field where wages have been historically suppressed and you have to negotiate contracts to get the funding you need to pay what you need to pay, it can be tricky to make all those things tie together. So that was the first goal. In 2022, thankfully, we accomplished that initial goal. And we can go on to the next here. So when we accomplished that initial goal, we of course set a new goal. And our current wage goal is that all workers earn a dignified wage that affords them the ability to live in an apartment in the city we serve without rent burden. And so I like this goal a lot because it is scalable no matter where you live. It's really dependent on what that means to each community. For us in Seattle, what that means is to be able to live in the community that you're serving in Seattle right now, to afford even a studio apartment, you need to earn a salary of $88,440 a year and not face the HUD definition of rent burden. So that's our goal. We want to get there. We are not there yet, but that's our benchmark. That's what we're shooting for. That's the floor we want to get to. You can go ahead here to the next. I put up in here just so you can all see kind of how we're looking at this and tracking it. This is just based off the HUD data on fair market rent, which anyone can look up year over year. And there's actually new data that just came out pretty recently for 2025. So numbers are slightly adjusted now. But you can look it up by region and it will tell you. We are looking at for our floor to even just be a studio apartment. So that is so our entry-level workers, brand new workers into the field can afford to serve their community, you know, for the first time working in this field, maybe first time in entering the workforce, they are able to afford a studio apartment and not face rent burden. This is what they need to be able to earn to do that. And live alone. And that would be, you know, a very small efficiency. That's what it would take. And then you can see how that kind of compares to other cities across the country. And it really, really varies depending on location. Okay, we can go on to the next here. So I wanted to talk about some of the strategies that we've used to make some of these goals possible. And to make some of these goals a reality, really, and some of the things that we've been doing over the past few years that have been successful. So the first thing I'd say that really kicked all of this off working well was actually defining those goals. It was a huge eye-opener in that first round back in 2016 to actually see how far behind we were compared to the market in general. And so, you know, if you haven't done that work before, highly recommend doing that work as a self-check. That's a really important thing to do. We have since incorporated using both the National Bureau of Labor Statistics information. We also use a nonprofit on ArchBright data. We'll pay for that now annually to get a report on that so we can get their data as well to understand how we compare against other nonprofits in our state, that sort of thing. But however you need to do it, it is really important to just kind of see and track how you are doing in comparison. I do like also, though, having that not necessarily compared explicitly to other nonprofits, because comparing ourselves to other suppressed jobs is not a great way of rising ourselves up the way we need to be. We often look at comparable positions that are paid in other fields, like in government or in hospital systems, in other types of similar of levels of importance of work, but have maybe made it through and been paid at higher levels, but require the same kinds of skills that we know our workers possess. So we'll often look at comps that are related to things like in the medical field or in hospital settings, in crisis settings, in emergency response settings, those sorts of things. Another thing that has been really helpful for us has been doing a lot of our advocacy with our funders in collaboration with our labor union. We are actually a unionized organization. So SEIU, our local SEIU 1199 Northwest has been a part of DESC since about 2008. And so, of course, they were very eager to participate in any sort of advocacy related to wages. But um, this this move together to actually show up with our together with our labor union management and labor together to funders, to local electeds, to government officials, all that working side by side was really impressive, I think, to a lot of people to show that we meant business as leaders. So like coming from like the management side of it all, it showed really, I think, good faith on our side that we are taking this issue seriously. And, we meant business by it. And I think it produced really positive results, especially in a city where labor is taken very seriously by a lot of elected officials. So that worked in our favor in this instance. We did a lot of work to also focus on employee wellness holistically. So we did have work done to do a comprehensive assessment for the entire organization to better understand like what do our employees need more than income. Like what will help folks feel supported in every which way possible. And so definitely recommend thinking of wellness, wages and wellness holistically and not just as, what goes in the pocket or in the bank account. And that's been great, but we can't ignore the fact that, if folks are struggling financially, everything is going to be much harder. Just that's the way it is. And then the next piece that I wanted to get to is just these next two items here real quick. The advocacy related to policy and progressive tax structures. So one of the things that's been pretty different, I think, that we've done is taken it to this next level of kind of coalition building among partner organizations and other service providers around our area and doing similar work that we do, all coming together and advocating together with city council, finding like a city council member who's really into this idea, or other elected officials at the state who are really into this idea, and actually getting local electeds to sponsor legislation to create some sort of fund for our work. And so since we've started really focusing in on our wage work, we've had the ability to see the introduction of a statewide permanent supportive housing benefit and a citywide benefit, both that go directly towards the operations, maintenance, and services for permanent supportive housing. And that is all due to just amazing coalition building and partnership with other organizations. Like, there's no way that would have been accomplished without working together and not like competing against each other. It really became a matter of like, we all know we need to do this to keep our organizations afloat and to pay our workers more. And so we are much, much, much stronger together and not competing against each other. And so once we made that kind of mind shift set, it was truly a game changer. So this is some of the sample messaging that really seems to work. And make sure y'all can have this with you if you'd like it, and feel free to take any of it. I think the biggest one that really started to get to us was when when our workers were just saying like, how conflicted they were feeling about the fact that they were helping the folks that they were serving in our shelter apply for the same housing, like affordable housing resources that they needed to apply for too. And so like they were in direct competition for the same affordable housing sources. Like that was heartbreaking. Like we are in this to build affordable housing for people who are in need of affordable housing, not to cause our staff to need affordable housing. And so when we were really able to lay that out for folks and be like, you're just like causing, like by not giving us the contracts that we need to pay people living wages, we're just perpetuating this cycle. Like it makes no sense. um it really started to click, I think, at that point. The other piece that really struck folks was this concept of people shouldn't have to leave direct service work to make a wage, to make a living wage. So what I think what Nicole was speaking to in the beginning, around, doing loving the direct service work and then having to leave and do another profession, um that's entirely it. And that's my story too. That's why I got into this other side of things, administration, all that kind of stuff. There was no way, there was no path out of just staying with direct service work and having a financially sustainable life. And we want to change that. We have amazing direct service workers, and caring for people should be a profession that is enough to help people to like live off of, to have a living wage with. And so just really trying to paint that picture, paint those messages that this should and needs to be thought of as a profession that where people, it's not a volunteer gig. This is like a line of work that needs to be paid professionally. I think is starting to resonate a lot more. Okay. Here's just a couple quick things about the progress that we've seen over time. So our current wage floor at DESC, if you remember, I said that we need to be at 88,000 for folks to be able to afford a studio. We're at about 60, and that's good. That's a huge increase. I mean, we're at $30.50 an hour, which is a lot. When I started at DESC, I made like $8.75 an hour back in 2008. So like to me, it feels like a lot. It is a lot. But it's not enough. Like our city's really expensive. So we're working, we're making progress. I mean, if you look at the chart here with our current wage, we are back at we're about at 20. Yeah, we're kind of close on par with like where we needed to be in 2021, for what it would take to have been able to afford a studio back in 2021. So we're like living about 4 years in the past at this point. So we have ways to go. You can go on to the next here. And then this is some data around the differences that we've seen and the indicators of success we've had in terms of staff retention and turnover, that sort of thing. So here we're looking at our turnover rate and vacancy rate, and our total authorized positions versus active employees. And so you can see we've definitely started to close that gap here, in 2024, between how many open jobs we have, and how many authorized positions we have to fill. And then our overall vacancy rate has gotten so much better than what we were experiencing in that 2022 timeframe. We can go to the next. Okay, that's it for the presentation part for me. Happy to chat more and answer any questions folks have.
Thank you, Lauren. So if you have questions, please make sure you drop them in the question and answer box, and we will ask those live. And I just need to say that I love, Lauren, that you all, or that you highlighted like wage suppression and the inequities for BIPOC folks and women, especially in this space, because we know that a lot of times the people who come to do this work are coming because they were directly impacted. And a lot of us know about how BIPOC folks and women specifically are just overrepresented in homelessness. And then we come to try to do the good work to end it, and we can't make any money. So we're fighting, for the low income or affordable housings, just like our clients. And it's really tough. It also reminds me about the fact that we are doing this big push to engage people with lived experience of homelessness. And one of the things that I find myself thinking about is once we start engaging with people with lived experience and expertise more, are we just going to try to pay them less since the rest of
Right.
us know I'm out? Like that's something that I think about a lot. So I'm really glad to see like the messaging that you all are putting out there and the way you're like really advocating for system wide change across like the whole community. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I want to note one other thing about that. We are, um, we pay our peers the same as our case managers. They are on the same pay scale. So that is something that I highly encourage doing. Their work is slightly different in scope, but in many ways not. I, they're providing high levels of support, and hearing the same stories every day. And sometimes in more detail, a lot more detail. And so, yeah, we made that decision, I think 4 or 5 years ago, to make sure there wasn't a disparity there. And I highly encourage that.
Just love that. We have a question for you, Lauren. I often see government grants and contracts for human services lasting 2 to 5 years, but in Seattle, the cost of living changes so fast. Have you had any success renegotiating already awarded contracts to accommodate for this?
Thank you. That is a really good question. So, one of the advocacy things that we were able to accomplish within the city of Seattle was a few years ago a piece of legislation that requires our human service contracts to increase with inflation every year. That was a game changer. And a hard battle. So that has helped significantly, and that is the thing that keeps us going at this point. Of course, now if inflation ever there is a floor to it. I believe the floor is 2%. So I think we can guarantee a minimum of 2% inflation every year, which is helpful. And then I believe there's a max that got put in there. So if something real wild happens, like I don't think they'll ever jump it to, 16% or whatever if we're having real weird economic times in this country. But I mean, it's come in super helpful. A couple years ago when inflation got up to, I don't think it was like 7 or 8%. That's what we got on all of our contracts, and it was fabulous. Um, one of the slides that I had in here has all the stories about that in particular. And so, I can make sure we share the slides and folks can find out more information about that in particular, how that works, what happened, and hopefully it's a good roadmap to how to advocate for something similar, or at least how to try to start the conversation with local government folks on wherever you're living.
Thanks, Lauren. For our guests, make sure that you are dropping any questions that you have in the Q&A feature. And now we're going to get started with the panel discussion portion. What that means is we're going to ask a few questions and just let our panelists respond. And you all can drop questions as things come up, as they jump out to you, and we'll go ahead and get started. So you both, Lauren and Marika, both described kind of how you, or that you came up with like the living wage definition. When I think of living wage, I think of like just at the bare minimum, the job is paying me enough money to live comfortably. So like that means be able to like feed my family, pay my rent, not deal with housing insecurity, be able to take vacation days, be able to go to the doctor. How did you all work through coming up with like your definition for that?
Okay, so yeah, we did look at just the basics of yes, people need to be able because Lauren talked about staff needing the same services that clients need. And that was one of the things we're like, we can't have where staff are saying, yeah, this is I'm applying for an apartment and I can't get approved either because I don't make enough as well. And so looking at we did use the FMR as our base. And then we looked at what statistics were already out there, like using the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because they already look at all of the stuff that you need to have a living wage. And so we kind of said, we looked at the different positions and said, okay, these are what the positions are paying for there. And then we looked at what is the cost of living here and how do we need to reconcile those two to make sure that, yeah, people can afford the basics, which is also why we try to increase our health insurance, because if we couldn't reconcile something like you need to be able to go to the doctor, then we're going to pay for it.
Yep.
So that you can go to the doctor.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's our story too. I mean, that's really what it comes down to is how does the compensation we're providing actually impact the staff's wallet at the end of the day, at the end of the month, like how does it feel to live day to day? And if that experience on a daily basis or, monthly basis is super stressful, then I wouldn't consider it a living wage. And a lot of the other metrics that exist out there to try to look at these things, there's a whole bunch of calculators. I feel like MIT has a calculator, and all these different places have different kinds of calculators, but a lot of them um actually jack up the housing aspect of it quite a bit. And so the thing that I liked a lot about just sticking with the concept of we do not want anyone paying more than 30% of their income towards housing is that because I know we live at least in such an expensive city, that will at minimum guarantee that nobody is going to be like paying substantial amounts of income towards rent, like obscure amounts of income towards rent. And I think that's true anywhere, like it just, for whatever reason, that was the 30% number was what was set at some point in time, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're just sticking with it. It's what HUD makes us do for our tenants. Like, why not? We're in the housing space. Let's stick with it.
I love that. That reminds me of my very first case management job, and I had to take a client to like recertify for their SNAP benefits. And I remember my client being like so self-conscious to be in there with me. And I was like, well, you know what? I'll just recertify mine too. We're in here. Let's just do it together. And her face was
Mhm.
like yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I get food stamps too. Let's walk together. That brings me, Marika, you just mentioned, well, actually both of you, Lauren and Marika, mentioned about the the fact that like if you're living in an area where the cost of living is already high, it's easy to keep that 30%, and you know that like the number is going to be higher in terms of what makes a livable wage. But can you talk about maybe geographic differences across the balance of state and how that impacts the living wage?
Yeah, so we do, and that is because we have staff across those four areas in Mississippi, and there are going to be certain areas like in West Mississippi in the Delta, it's going to be a cheaper cost of living. But in North Mississippi, we have Seattle prices there. So it is, so we did try to, we did look at the FMR across the board and said, okay, this is what we can reconcile as far as, this is what the FMR is, this is what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says for that particular area, and this is what we can do in between to also make sure that it's fair across the state. So we can't give someone in North Mississippi more wages because they live in North Mississippi. It has to be that it's still in the middle, but it may be that those the amount that we came up with maybe a little bit less than what those in North Mississippi wanted to make, but still livable. And then it may be a little bit higher for those like Delta because they have a cheaper cost of living.
Right. And
Yeah, that's what we've tended to advocate for as well here when we're doing like our statewide kind of coalition building work for like state benefits and that sort of thing for operating and maintenance dollars for permanent supportive housing is that concept of make sure that the the expensive cities can afford it, and then the smaller communities will benefit from that. Like, the people living there will benefit. It's there's nothing wrong with paying them more. Like, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Just make sure we don't go under, like,
Yes. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of preventing going under, someone said that they're hearing that ensuring funding for efforts like this requires a mix of advocacy to increase contract amounts and account for inflation. Are there any other unique ways that you secured funding? For example, they may have more funding on a specific grant for 1 year, but can't guarantee that they'll continue to have that funding. So if they increase wages, it may be a huge risk, and then they'll be in over their heads on the next year's budget. Do you have any suggestions or an answer, helpful tip for this person?
So I'll go back to my presentation. Like I said, with my ED, it is not because all of our grants are year to year, every last one of them. We don't have, I think we have one grant that is a 5-year grant, but most of our grants are year to year. Now, we also, anytime we hire, we are letting folks know that as well, that any of these grants could end. That they could. But we are always looking ahead. So if we say that we are looking at this grant that may end in 1 year, because for instance, when during COVID, there was just money everywhere. Okay, so it was just money being thrown out there. And so how did we say, okay, how are we going to keep those wages once this flood of money goes away? Because of course we already knew it. We start looking at other grants then. So if I know that I have a year grant now, I'm looking for another grant already to go ahead and subsidize or to go ahead on move those clients, those staff members into for the next year. Also, it doesn't have to be like thinking outside of the box for grants. Like we have the day one funds from the Bezos grant. Also, my ED he is crazy when it comes to like he will always be like, we're asking for the max. So instead of thinking, well, we only need $100,000 to survive this year, think what do we need to get folks where they need to be for the
Yep.
next year? And so that may be 200,000. And organizations, grant funders, whoever it may be, the cities, they have to understand that this is what we need to function. This is what we need to actually do this grant. And so if you want this grant to succeed, then you must pay for it.
Yep. I can't add anything to that. That's exactly what we do.
Thank you both. Speaking of funding, staying on that page, what strategies, or are there additional strategies? You've already given us so much. Additional strategies that people can use when they want to go out and advocate for a living wage to get more of that funding into their organizations.
I think really not I can't underscore enough the how strong it is to work in coalition with other people, other organizations, other nonprofit groups. That does so much. It's so impactful to combine your voices together. And even if it might not be the same exact line of work as yours. So we'll do that often with homeless service providers, plus the behavioral health workers who support them, plus the folks who work in the food banks that, feed them, plus, like all coming together, all the different human service workers coming together is how we actually got that inflation adjustment legislation passed, in particular. That I think that is really big, is just, making friends in that regard. Super helpful. That's the main thing that comes to mind for me.
I agree. Absolutely working together. Even if it has to mean like one relationship that we have is we have a data bridge grant. And what we did was the Salvation Armies, they have folks that their folks get very low pay. And one of the ways that we were able to partner with them is that that social worker that is putting in data, she now works for us and Salvation Army.
Mm.
We're paying for half of that salary, they're paying for half of that salary. And it was we were she was able to get an increase in her salary because of the fact that now they're only paying one portion. They couldn't afford the increase, but with that partnership, now we get the work done because our data is getting put in for that particular area, and there's an increase in wage there. Now we have Salvation Army on board to want to be able to um, shout to the whoever and say, hey, we need livable wage as well. And so those partnerships are very important. And like Lauren said, it doesn't have to be, it is anybody who works in the arena of your field. Like it can all the voices will help.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts about like how to overcome the obstacles that are inevitably going to come up when people go out and try to get this funding or try to advocate for livable wages?
Do you mean like maybe things that they tips that they can uh like maybe encourage this or
Give some tips for encouraging this, and also if there are any challenges that you all
Mm.
encountered, how did you overcome them?
I can say one thing that we had to make a real commitment to on our end as an organization was, and it was so hard because of how mission driven we are as an organization, but was a real commitment to saying no and meaning it. Um, so uh if that same funder that you've just asked for more resource comes back at you and says, but will you do more work? Like, don't do it. Like, and that is the hardest thing to tell any mission driven, you know, person with a heart who loves the people that they're serving, to say no. And that it killed us. Like, I mean, like, it was just like the hardest part of all of this. But it's also what made the difference is when they finally realized, like, oh, they're serious. Like, we don't have anyone else to turn to. Like, that's what it was. It's like they realized finally, like, oh, we're stuck. We can't take advantage of them anymore. And so being bold and being willing to walk away when you're asked to do more, I think is pretty powerful.
I absolutely agree. I'm going to sound so boastful when I say this, but in college, the modeling squad that I was absolutely not on, they had this saying that it's not bragging if you can back it up. And so basically, we take that approach. And so if we have literally turned down funds because the funder is saying, hey, you need to do all of this for $5. And we're saying,
Yeah,
no,
no.
you can't we can't do that. Like you can't serve people efficiently and pay for staff with this amount of money. And they said, well, that's all we can give you. And we said, well, we don't want it. We won't do it. We found another way to do it without their funds. And now
Yeah.
they're coming back and saying, wait, please, we didn't know you were serious about this and that you wouldn't actually take it. And because we're not going to do this, we're not going to ask staff to work for 8 hours for this amount of money. And we're like Lauren with DESC, like we take our clients very seriously. I'm like literally fighting with staff saying, hey, you cannot take someone like you can't do this at 8 o'clock at night. You got to turn your phone off. Like our staff actually care about the clients. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of them. And so then if that means that we have to push back on a funder and say, no, this is how much it takes, then that's what we have to do. Last year we had a grant where 60% of the grant was staff and 40% was client helping with client financial assistance. And the funder said, hey, what happened here? And we said, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to do. And we have less clients in that area that we need to serve. And therefore, the staff are doing what they're supposed to do. So they got to get paid to continue to do what they're doing. And so we don't back down either. We have to be bold. And then there are times when something just has to be done. If it's a situation where it's like it has to be done, this is all the funding that is available to do it with, then we are looking for that partnership or something else to continue to say we're going to take care of the staff, but we're going to actually get the work done too, even though they only have $5 to get it done with.
I love that $5 example because that's what it feels like. It feels like $5.
It's just $5.
I love that. I'm hearing like leadership has to be on board. That
Yeah.
brings our questions. What strategies has your organizations used to show the cost benefit of increasing time off or increasing fully paid health insurance? I find this can be very slow work and easily pushed aside as other priorities pop up. How can I build a strong and appealing case for my executive director and board?
So for the health leave, we looked at just in our own organization. We looked at how if a person is worried about whether or not they can be off work, because they don't have the insurance, they don't have insurance to go to the doctor or those things, that it's really jeopardizing the rest of the team.
Hmm.
Because one, somebody coming in sick is going to get everybody sick. That doesn't help anybody.
Right.
Two, someone coming in sick doesn't feel like you care about them if I'm having to come to work and I don't feel good. So we just looked at the fact that it was bringing up morale, just knowing that I went from I can freely go to the doctor and not be worried about one, time off, or two, how I'm going to pay for it. So just in-house, we realized how it brought up morale, just giving them that. So I think encouraging your ED to look at uh, how the staff member will become more I hate saying the word a company man, but I can't think of another one.
Hmm.
When they feel like the company cares about them. And so one of the things that I do feel like my company cares about me is them providing me with insurance, providing children with insurance, making sure that I am not only taken care of, that I'm not only taken care of, but my household is being taken care of. And therefore, in return, I want to take care of what's happening at work. I want to make sure that we have not had, I'm sorry, we had one incident where someone was writing their own um, medical excuses. She is no longer with us. But other than that, we haven't had any issues with people misusing our, insurance or medical leave or any of those things, because we want to make sure that we're taking care of them. And so the more they feel like we're taking care of them, they want to take care of clients and making sure that the work that is important is being done.
Hmm.
Thank you both. In that staff person's defense, sometimes that PTO is just not enough, and you've got to do what you can to
I
get
just,
it.
I
So
was
true.
very, I was very shocked. I was like, you actually did have to make this up. We don't even require a medical excuse until after 2 days. So you didn't even have to make it up. I don't
Oh,
know what happened there,
oh
ma'am.
dear.
So clearly you're not just a good fit for our organization.
In our make sure you all drop your final questions, because we only have about 12 minutes left. But in these last few minutes, if either of you, Lauren or Marika, have any more thoughts that you want to share, any more nuggets that you want to drop, we would love to hear them.
I'll let Lauren go first. Well,
I'm thinking. I'm thinking. Um, Gosh, there's so many different things I can say. I don't know. My mind's all over the place.
That's perfectly fine, because I have my own list of questions
Oh,
here.
please ask away. Yeah.
I think Marika talked about cross training. And then I know, Lauren, you mentioned that you used to work in the field, and then similar to me, you made a switch because of just the lack of options to increase earning potential.
Mhm.
How have you all seen this play out on the other side? So like the fact that you are cross training, or the fact that your wages are now higher and benefits are better for those frontline workers. Are you seeing them, like, A, stay with the company or organization
Yeah.
long, and B, seek out, more as higher levels, additional positions, want to grow further and learn more, things like that?
Yes, I can say on our end. So at DESC, one of the ways that we often saw staff getting stuck in their career path trajectory was um they would start in an entry level role working like at the front desk of one of our permanent supportive housing sites, and then maybe become a case manager type position in housing or in one of our clinics. And then, unless they had a master's degree to be a social worker, They would that would be kind of like the top they could get to. Um, Unless they went the path of housing, then the top would be managing one of our buildings, and that was the top. Um, and then that top though still wasn't paying very high to manage one of our permanent supportive housing buildings. So that is kind of where I petered out and got stuck for a while. What we've done though since has made it so that folks not only can we've been able to loosen degree requirements in a lot of ways because we know experience means so much more than just a degree can mean. So that's one way that we've gone about some of this. Where we can loosen degree requirements, we have in both our clinical and housing areas of work. And so that has created a lot of new career trajectory opportunities for folks. Simultaneous to raising those wages at all levels, not just our frontline levels, but at the management levels as well, and mid-level management levels, we've been able to retain project management staff in our direct service programs for like over a decade for some of them now at this point in time. So they are like well embedded and entrenched in these programs where like the stability is unreal at this point for those housing programs. Um, and they're making wages that are fully livable, like great salaries at this point, compared to what it would have been 10 years ago. So just the retention has been remarkable, and the ability, I think, for folks to see um, pathways up has also increased significantly.
And for us, our tiering system helps with that. So we have some folks who don't want to be in management, right? And so we had to figure out a way to help them still grow financially without them having to take on something that they wouldn't want to. Um, and it has grown morale. It's so funny. The other day, I realized that one of our outreach navigators, he's been with us, I think it's 3 years now, but he's changed his title to outreach guru. And I was like, cool. And that because I believe it. I'm like, he's the best we have. He is so good at his job. Um, he trains the rest of the state. And so we want to make sure that he's not still at a entry level pay for an outreach worker when he
Right.
is an outreach guru at this point. So we do that tiering system helps us to be able for those who don't want to actually move into management, but they want to stay as an outreach coordinator or a case manager, but they can still earn more money the longer they are staying in there. And then we do see where people are actually wanting to get into management though, as because of the tiering system and because of the wages that just increase in the tiering system has really helped too because of people see where all of their benefits are increasing. So
Yeah. Yep, we have that too. Thank you for mentioning that. The tiering really helps.
yeah.
And people can plan that way too. They know what's coming, which is so helpful for their like career planning.
Y'all are awesome. If I didn't have to pay back my law school loans, I'd be coming back into direct service because this is amazing. Like this is what the field needs. So thank you all for coming today. We're at the end of our presentation. My colleague Maddie Nation just dropped a link to the slides in the chat. So you should be able to see them. It's the link to the slide deck from today. And then at the end of this, we'll email the recording to everyone who registered. So whatever email address you registered with, you'll receive the recording from today's presentation. And then we also have a survey for everyone to complete. Maddie, did you want to hop on to tell people? Oh, never mind. Maddie just dropped the link for the satisfaction survey in the chat. It's really helpful for us when we're planning these kinds of conversations so that we can just get feedback, see what you thought, excuse me, worked well, what didn't. So if you could take a minute to fill that out, that would be great. Thank you again to our panelists, Lauren and Marika. You were amazing. Thank you for going out and doing the hard work to make sure that our very important service providers have everything they need to be whole and well and healthy and do the work of providing those same services to all the folks that we're trying to help make life better for. So thank you all for coming. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.